Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the I Do Music podcast, and our goal and our mission is to empower and educate musicians and artists worldwide. And on today's episode, we sat down with the Queen, Regina Davenport, discussing her early days at LaFace Records, assisting for KP the Great and David Banner, and working on projects like Stankonia and Speakerbox, The Love Below. Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the I Do Music podcast, and I'm sitting down with someone who probably has a long list of titles, but she prefers to just be called Queen, Regina Davenport. You have worked with the likes of the Dungeon Family, to Outkast, to KP, who you currently still work with, as well as David Banner. Mm-hmm. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome. I really didn't think you were going to say that, but that was pretty cool.
I had to figure something out, right? So usually when I sit on this podcast, I do talk to a lot of people who have no information online. You're one of those people. So it's really hard to say exactly, but I know just even looking through social media and my experiences with you, that you've been around the business for some time. You definitely had your hands in the music business here in Atlanta early on, before there was really much going on, especially in the hip hop scene, right?
Yes.
Yes. So can you just give us an introduction? I know you're from the Bay, and
All day.
San Francisco. There's a lot of people who moved from the Bay to Atlanta during that time, especially. So just curious as to like what provoked that move, or what caused you to move to Atlanta. Like, what was that transition for you?
I actually decided to move here because I wanted to go to a historically black college.
Nice.
So I applied to Clark and to Spelman, and I didn't get into Spelman, but I did get into Clark.
It's okay.
So I moved here to go to school. I didn't go right away because I was getting established. I had two children, two young sons. So I started working first, and then I reapplied again, and I got into Spelman. So
Nice.
I went there for maybe about a year.
Really?
And then work just kind of took over.
And so what was work for you early on? So you had two sons before college.
Yes.
Yes. And then all of you guys moved to Atlanta.
Yes.
Okay.
Had never been here a day in my life.
Didn't have any family here?
I had one friend who moved here. She had lived in California, in San Francisco previously, too. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I really like it here. And I was like, well, if you like it, I'll come in 6 months. So 6 months later, she called. She was like, I like it. And I was like,
That takes a lot of guts, it seems, to move, literally uproot your family from somewhere across the country for what you just knew of Atlanta.
Yeah, which was literally nothing.
That's crazy.
But it's so expensive to live in the Bay Area,
right.
And I just felt that we would have a better chance here.
Right, absolutely.
So
nice. And so after a year at Spelman, you realized, like, okay, work was picking up. What was work like for you at that time?
I was working at LaFace Records. I was a receptionist. I didn't have a vehicle, so I was getting up at like 5 a.m, taking the daycare, catching 2-3 buses to school, then after school, catching the bus to work, and after work, catching the bus back home, picking them up from daycare. It was a lot.
Yeah. So. It sounds like a lot of sacrifices.
Yeah.
In hindsight, do you feel like it was worth it?
It was, but I also still have the urge to finish.
Finish school? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What were you studying?
Accounting at the time.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you think that that's something in your foreseeable future?
Because actually, I loved going to school, but when I got into accounting, I really disliked it.
Yeah. Yeah. School is definitely challenging, especially when I know me and my mom have had this discussion about her finishing to get her like RN license, and that's something that she just wanted to do for herself. But at the end of the day, like when she started, it had been so long having to go back to doing those like foundation classes, like the math and the whatever. It's like, I don't remember this stuff. I know I don't want to go back to school.
And like math is different now than it was. So
yeah,
it's not just going back and trying to pick up. You have to relearn
so much.
A whole different way.
Yeah. But why do you think that the education piece is important for you? Like, why is that something you even considered going back to finish?
I think it's just knowing that I didn't finish. So there's this little nagging there.
Yeah. Is that something you encourage your sons to?
Yeah, I do. I've encouraged them to go to school, but I think whatever your dream is, that you should go for that. I think school is great, but to be in school and not be happy is a whole nother ball game.
So how did you land the position at LaFace, like to become the receptionist? You just applied, or did you know somebody?
I had been here about 6 months, and I was just like, I'm going to send my resume to LaFace, right? So I sent it, and they called me like 2 weeks later, like, can you come in for this interview? And I'm like, okay, sure. So I went in for the interview, and that I think maybe 2-3 days later, they were like, when can you start? I'm like, I have to get my youngest son in school first, so can you give me about a week?
Yeah.
And they were like, okay.
Nice. So early on, what were like things that you were passionate about? Was music always in your future? Did you always have like a love or like a passion for music?
I loved the music as far as listening, so I was a fan in that aspect. But my passion really was fashion.
Oh, nice.
So I always wanted to be in the fashion, but I fell into music and, sustained.
Absolutely. So, currently you, I know, work closely with KP, the great DJ, producer, all of the things, executive, as well as I noticed recently David Banner. So what are your roles in both of their careers to date?
Okay. For KP, I am his assistant with I Am Mother. He's the head of music and the music director for Pharrell. So I work with him in that capacity. I also manage his DJ career as KP the Great. And for David Banner, I run a Banner Vision for him.
Oh, nice. Okay, so from LaFace, being a receptionist at LaFace, what was like the transition for you? You realized like school wasn't it, work was picking up, you had 2 young sons. What was that like next step for you? Like, were you comfortable at LaFace being the receptionist? What were you thinking like was next for you?
The reception was a great starting point for me, but I wanted to do more in the company. So I would just help other departments out in the hopes of getting in. And the KP came in. He came on as a consultant for A&R.
Right.
And he needed an assistant. So I talked to the general manager, and he talked to KP, and we had a meeting. And it's like, yeah, let's do it. Like, he's always been really laid back and supportive. So
Yeah, so you've been working with him since LaFace.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that.
I mean, there was a break in between when he went to Columbia and I went to work for Outkast, but we've always been in touch.
Absolutely.
And have been working forever.
So as an assistant, because I know a lot of people start in the business usually come from like, the mailroom or like an assistant job or, like early on those beginning stages. What did you learn from seeing everybody walk in, answering the phones? Like even for me, I started as an admin assistant here. So like talk about some of those things that you learned, just like super green to the industry, had no idea. You kind of didn't even really know you were going to get into music. Like, what were you learning especially at a place like LaFace? What was going on at that time?
What I learned, and I'd come actually from being a receptionist in California.
Oh, okay.
So I had that experience, but I learned what I would say the most valuable lesson I learned being at LaFace as a receptionist was patience. Because every day after school between 2 and probably 5 p.m., young kids would just call, "Am I speak to TLC? Is Usher there?
Right.
I speak to Outkast?" Like all day long. And I used to be, Lord. But when I figured out that for me, the lesson in that was patience, I was able to grow and go on to another position.
Right, exactly.
But a lot of people discount receptionists and assistants, but what you need to know is they are the gateway. So those are the people that you need to get in good with.
Absolutely. So are people doing like, we're sending you things to try to get in touch with other people?
Oh, man. They were sending things to the company. It's amazing some of the things that would come through there. There would just be demos, flowers. Like some people were so creative in their packaging. It may be like a dozen roses, right? But attached to it, maybe there was a demo. So I'm like, people are really creative. Humans are amazing.
You got to try to be seen in this business.
Absolutely. You have to stand out.
So I'm really curious about your times. I saw a lot of like throwback photos of you in the studio with Outkast, the Dre's, the even Blanco. I think he posted a picture of y'all like in the studio. I just thought that was super cool. Like you were around at those times. And during a time where like Atlanta wasn't really a hip hop like nobody was thinking about Atlanta hip hop. So Outkast and like the Dungeon Family, I guess but they were definitely like pioneering that space for us.
They definitely took it to the next level.
Right. So, I mean, just being in that space and like working with them, I wonder for you, like, how did you see or witness like that evolution of Southern hip hop or Atlanta's hip hop, rather, I should say?
I would say for me, when I started at LaFace, Outkast, I think, had just gotten signed, so they were in the process of recording Players Ball, the Christmas song.
Yes.
So, and just seeing how young and vibrant like they were, and the staff at LaFace at that time was really young. So it was like a growing process for all of us, just seeing the artists come in, and then the executives were like basically the same age as the artists. So just this culmination of youth, just always around, buzzing, and like really getting it done and making a mark in a new city. So it was really dope.
I mean, for you coming from the Bay, like to hear the music, were you like fascinated? Were you thinking like this is strange? Like, what were your thoughts in terms of? I mean, obviously you have a love for it, being around it, but I'm just curious because it was very different.
It is different, but like the Bay Area, to me, Atlanta has had its own swag. You know what I'm saying? So hearing the music here it was easy for me to assimilate.
Right.
And I really, really enjoyed it. In fact, I began to like it more than I like music from my own
Look, you trying to whisper it? You trying to whisper?
Don't kill me, San Francisco. But I really, really got into it. And I'd known a little about LaFace at that time when I was in San Francisco. I think TLC had just came out and they had a group named Damien Dame. So they were really in the early stages.
Like, what were some of your fondest memories? Like even, so let's go back a little bit. So you started assisting KP as he was consulting with LaFace, and like, was he still in the? Was he not in? He was still in.
He was still in PA.
PA.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, what were the things that you were doing at that time? Like, moving from being in the office to like now directly assisting an artist / exec or consultant.
Getting to know KP was really dope for me because when we first started working together, like you said, I was from the West Coast and he was from here, so he spoke really fast, right? So I had to listen intently to what he was saying, to understand or figure it out. But we grew really close. We got so close that when people would come in and he would speak, they would say, "What did he say? What did he say?" And I'd go, "He said."
You're a translator.
But yeah, he was, I wasn't his translator, but it was just really cool to watch him grow and evolve into the executive that he is and the great DJ that he is today.
What would you say, like, early on, like, were some of the things that you see have translated, like, over the years? Like, though, we grow and we evolve into, like, I guess elevating into other positions, but there's something about KP that I'm sure you've been able to observe over the years that speak to why he's where he is now.
KP has always been consistent. And the person that he is today is a person that he's always been. He hasn't changed. And that I really love and respect about him.
Absolutely.
And he continues to learn and grow.
Nice. And to speak about evolution, how do you think you've evolved since starting in the business? Like, I mean, you're doing similar things, but you've been able to watch and like observe the growth of these artists and executives over the years. So I think even with that, like there's some evolution that comes to play with you as well.
Absolutely. I think for me, growing in music and mostly discovering who I am and what I like and doing different positions in smaller companies have really helped me to see what I thought I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And realize that I really don't. And where the things that I didn't like, some of the things I didn't like, that those are the places where I'm really strong. So it's a constant growing and self-evaluating.
Absolutely. That's interesting that you say some of the things that you didn't like or some of your strongest suits. That's interesting. Like, what would you say some of those things were that you discovered?
For me, I did A&R, and I was like, I always want to do A&R, but then kind of when I got into it, I'm like, you know what, it's cool, but it's just
not for me.
Not for me, right? But in that same aspect on the administrative side, I'm like, okay, I like this. And I've never, ever liked math, right? But I've always been really strong. So I learned to embrace that, like, that's my gift. And I'm good on the administrative and the accounting side.
So you're like, I mean, I don't like it to play with these numbers, but I will. I got you. So,
I love it now, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the numbers don't lie.
They don't. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Wait, so A&R, were you an A&R for LaFace, or were you just independently?
I was an A&R coordinator at LaFace, but when I went to work with Outkast, I was at A&R. And A&R on Stankonia, Speaker Box to Love Below. I'm not sure about Idlewild. That was a transition for me when they came out with Idlewild.
So let's talk about that period of time for you, like working directly with Outkast. Is it Purple Ribbon? What were your responsibilities as an A&R? Like, obviously we know, and especially at that time, A&R was probably doing a lot more than no shade, but like some A&Rs would do today. It's a different landscape. But at that time, like, artists were being developed.
Yes.
You're putting a lot of different artists, songwriters, producers, musicians into spaces. What were you doing on that side, especially just learning, like trying to figure it out, like what you're supposed to be doing? I'm curious as to
what's funny is that the industry in that time, they were kind of transitioning from more of the artist development.
Oh, really?
So there was still artist development happening. But remember, Outcasts are very creative. So a lot of their vision is already there. So we pretty much have to execute and then, just add on to it. So with Outkast, I would say doing a lot of their booking their sessions, hiring the musicians, pulling the talent in that they want to use on records, and making sure mixes, mastering, like the complete
package,
encompassing the complete project.
Absolutely.
On the production side.
Nice.
So it was amazing.
That's dope. So what was your favorite project to work on, like in terms of the atmosphere, the energy, the music, all of the things?
I would say between Stankonia and Speaker Box Love Below, my favorite song that I worked on, though, I think was Ghetto Music. And that's because on Ghetto Music, Dre used Morris Brown at the time. He used their band, so we actually had to go there for rehearsals. He had to instruct them and tell them what he wanted. And then when we actually did the recording session, we had to hire buses and ship them to the studio. And there were like 75 to 100 musicians.
Oh, wow.
So it was awesome.
That's dope.
Then to see like the music come together, but then the visual along with the music was
it really
amazing.
set it off.
It did.
Were you were at the music video shoot as well?
Yes, I want to tell you one of the video shoots. One of my least favorite video shoots, funny, is because what is the one? Fresh So Clean. Dope song, right?
Really?
Well, it wasn't my favorite because they shot a part of it in a church, right? Like in a physical church. And so when I went into church, because, I go to church a lot.
Yeah.
I'm in there and I'm like, wait a minute. So there were like pimps, scantily clad women, video directors.
So morally,
in my
it did not
mind,
sit
I'm
with
like, oh. But then I had to check myself. I'm like, well, this is what it's supposed to be. So.
But morally, it did not sit with you. You're like, what is this?
It didn't at first, but I had to check myself because it was a me thing. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So. That's dope. I really like that video, by the way.
It was.
It was a great
really
video.
Cool.
So, I mean, Love Below and Speaker Box Love Below was one of my favorites personally because you saw you were there with the transition of them kind of establishing their solo careers and but also working on this joint venture of two separate projects. It's different for music. We didn't really see that necessarily, so that was something very different. How did you guys come up with the concept to say that this was, or if you were involved, if you could speak to that this was going to be the way that they established, hey, we're embarking on our solo careers?
Actually, that was Dre and Big. They came up with the concept, and even though they were separate projects, they recorded a lot of it, together. Nice. So Big was on Dre's side in the studio recording with him. Dre was producing, and on Big's side recording with him, and then just watching the whole process of them putting it together. how it was just like that album was really a record breaker. You know what I'm saying? Just watching them put it together and the musicians come in, and they were just, to me, they are so brilliant. And they were so young at the time doing it. And I think that was the first album that they solely produced themselves, mostly.
Nice.
So
Nice.
it's really dope to see them transition as producers and as artists.
Right. It's like a huge accomplishment to see. Okay, so do you feel like, at the time when you first started, you eager, just moved to a new city, now working at like one of the biggest record labels at the time here in Atlanta, do you still have that same hunger for your job as when you started? And if so, why? Or if not, why not?
I some aspects I do.
Which aspects are those?
I love to see the new artists and how they grow. Like the grassroots portion in the beginning is my favorite part. Like I like to see them from the beginning and how they just blossom, and learn and just grow into they start like a little seed, planted in the ground, and then they just flourish like these beautiful lilies. And I think that part is amazing to me.
Yeah.
And I like beginnings because it's fresh and it's new.
Yeah, and you've been around the careers of many at the beginning, at the foundation for them. So I think that's probably why that still does it for you.
You can tell early on if they have that it factor. So
what do you think is the it factor? I always like to ask this question. I know a lot. It's very hard to answer, right?
It is very hard to answer. I can't say like, oh, this is it. You know what I'm saying? It's more of a feeling, that it's evoked in you, and you're like, yo, they have something special. Like you can feel it in their presence and their aura. Like it's there, and it just needs to be nurtured.
Right. Aside from the it factor, though, there's some sort of similarities that maybe Dre and Big had, that KP has, that even a David Banner has. What would you say those qualities are that will keep you in the game, that will keep you, because these people that I'm naming, these artists and executives, they have remained consistent in the game and evolved. Even like now David Banner's doing a podcast, and like, you have a Dre who's experimenting with other instruments and still like creatively just doing his own thing. And to see that evolution, but to understand that they've still been able to sustain, it speaks to who they are. And I wonder if you notice there's like some sort of similarity.
Yes. They all work really hard, and they don't work within boundaries. Like they push, they believe in them, they believe in what they do. So they keep going for it. They don't allow other people to tell them, this isn't going to work, that isn't going to work. They just go for it because they know. So no matter, even if you have the it factor, and you have to have, the it factor, you still have to work really hard, because someone who has less talent than you can outwork you, and they're going to win.
Absolutely.
So you can't just like, I got it,
Right. I agree. So let me ask you this, because, you transitioned from different jobs, but it seemed like there was kind of a flow of it came in based upon who you knew, your connections. Why are your connections and relationships even to this day valuable? Like, why do you feel like, even nurturing those relationships are valuable? We had a conversation before I went on tour, just about my tour experience, some things that I could
and I want to ask you about it.
We will talk about it off the record.
Okay.
But I appreciated you from like being someone who doesn't see a lot of people, and now you see a lot more women, and I have a lot of OGs who are women who have inspired me and I continue to try to nurture those relationships as well. But just someone that I saw early on here at the studio that embraced me early on. Like KP was our very first interview, so I met you like literally at the very beginning of this. But from there, you've always been like a helping hand, and I feel like somebody was that for you, or has been that for you. Why would you say that, just maintaining relationships and those connections are important, and not just like getting them and then, because now it's like so easy to just connect with people. Like you can connect on social media and then like never talk to them again.
It is. It's really easy to do that. But I've always thought that relationships are really important, and that you need to nurture those, because you never know who's going to need you in the future or if you're going to need someone else in the future. So I think it's very important that you're always genuine, that you give to others, and like you help out when you can. Like if each one teach one, we'd be much further. I think we sometimes get caught up in, oh, I can't show this person that because they're going to outshine me. But if you're a great teacher, all your students are still your products, so they just build your brand.
Absolutely.
So.
I think that's great advice. Anything that you wish you knew then that you know now? Like, because I mean, we talked about a lot of the sacrifices you made even before you started in the business. Like just moving here with 2 children is a sacrifice in itself that I know a lot of people may not have had the strength to do. But I'm curious to know if there was something that you're like, well, they could have made it a lot easier had I known.
I think it could have made it a lot easier had I known to focus on one thing and not try to do a lot of different things. And to realize that if it's something that you're really not into, it's okay to walk away. You know what I'm saying? And do what you love. So,
When do you think it's important to walk away? Like, what were some instances where you're like, okay, I've done all I can here. It's time.
I would say for me, there isn't. It's a feeling for me. You know what I'm saying? When I believe in something or someone, I give my all. You know what I'm saying? And I'm very loyal. So there could be a point, you know, sometimes where there's a feeling in me was like, okay, look, you've done all you can here. Now it's time to go. But then I have to fight with me and say, no, don't go, you know. But you have to recognize when your spirit man talks to you, you need to move and get out of your get the human man out of the way and move in the spirit, because the spirit will guide you. But we sometimes impede on that guidance, and we shouldn't. We have to learn to listen to ourselves more. So self-evaluate and listen and trust yourself and your instinct.
Absolutely. When do you think, I mean, you've been involved, or you still are involved in artist teams, so it's like, you know, you're managing affairs, you're coordinating things. I mean, you just like always have your hands in whatever, and you always seem to be in the space like where you need to be. So I think for one to commend you, because I didn't even realize that you were working with like multiple people. I just thought it was like KPE, because that's usually when I see you, and I'm like, wow, she's doing like David Benner stuff and he's super busy. Like how do you balance that? But then I want to also talk about like the team, like what's important. Like when is it necessary for an artist to even build their team, and who should they have involved? Like who are some people that are around you? Because I know it's not just Regina that's doing everything.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I would say building your team, you should start early on. I don't think you need a massive team. Just starting early, a couple people, not only that you trust, but that can do the work. You know, so a lot of people like to get friends and family, and that's fine if they're credible and can do the work, because it's a lot of hard work. A lot of people think once you get signed, hey, we've made it. No, you've just gotten signed. But now you have to make it out of this building of hundreds of other artists. So I would say just get people that know what they're doing, that can get it done, that are great at relationships, and they know they are open to growing, and most importantly, confident in who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And now let's talk about the balance part of it, because I mean, you have to have your own life, maybe. You know, sometimes
I have a little life.
You have a little life. You have to nurture your children. You have to be supportive of their lives and what they have going on. Also, you're managing and maintaining and assisting multiple people who do a lot of the things.
And it's not easy. And there is some balance there. But it's quite oftentimes out of balance because it consumes so much of my personal life.
How do you remember these things? Do you live by a calendar? Do you live by
I do
notes?
have a calendar. I have a really thick notebook, And I put notes in my calendar. I put them in a notebook. Sometimes I transfer from a notebook to an index card. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot because Banner and KP are both very active. But the one thing I try to maintain is that between the both of them is that they have a relationship. You know what I'm saying?
True.
So they know each other. They know I'm working with both of them. And they're like genuinely friends.
Right.
So
Right.
I think it's dope that it's transparency there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's talk about David Banner, like how you were able to link with David Banner and just like all of the things that you're involved in that he has going on as well, because we didn't really get into that.
Okay.
Like how did he seek you out because he knew you were doing stuff like this? Or
we actually met when he was an artist very early on before he really got on.
Mm-hmm.
He used to come to Stankonia, but a young man by the name of Slim Calhoun used to come to me and tell me, yo, Regina David Banner got them 5 beats. He used to say that all the time. I'm like, okay. So he's like, y'all want to get in with Banner, man. So that's actually how me and Banner met, was through Slim Calhoun. So I booked time for them to get in together, and then they would record, and me and Banner became really close, you know. And he went on to go do Like a Pimp, and I think at that time he was working on Mississippi, the album. Mm-hmm. So we met, and we just kind of stayed in contact. And that is a testament to relationships and sustaining and maintaining your relationships. So I've known Banner at least almost a decade and a half or 2 decades now. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And so then full circle, he's like, I need some help.
Yeah.
He's like, I need some help. Let me call Regina.
Yeah, I came back and started, came back. I hadn't even worked with him at that point. But
right.
I started working with him on the God Box and doing the production coordination for that project. Mm-hmm. And so we started working together then. And after that album came out, you know, he was out promoting it, and he's like, you know, I need some more help. So I'm like, okay, I'll come help. Because then he starts selling, you know, the God boxes,
right,
which did amazing. So I helped him in that, and then it just kept going and growing. And here we are today. He's one of my best friends.
That's what's up. And I mean, now you guys are working on so many different things. I saw it was a shoe, the podcast, and just tell me about the shoe. Like, is it like, do you have any? Is it that the artist kind of comes up with these elaborate ideas and then you're just like helping with the execution, or do you kind of help creatively too? Or
I wish I could take some credit for that shoe, but there's a brilliant young man that works with us named Salih Robinson, and he designed the shoe.
Nice.
And there may be another one in the works, but he designed that shoe.
Dope.
He and Banner together.
Nice.
And it is doing very well.
Yeah,
selling
everywhere.
Out.
That's what's up.
So
that's very different.
It's a different shoe.
Yeah, it's very different. So, I mean, I'm curious to know, like, people call on you, they trust you. Like, why do you feel, and it's not the time to be humble, but I'm just curious to know from just looking over your career and looking over the people that you've been able to work with, why do you feel like you're the woman for the job that people continuously call on Regina?
Well, Sammy, I don't ever feel that I'm the woman for the job.
No? Really?
I mean, I just don't think like that. I just want to help people, so I help. And I've been blessed to work with some amazing people and be involved in some of their careers, like the Outkast, Killer Mike's, Janelle Monae's. Like, it's been an amazing career.
What did you do
thus far.
with Janelle Monae?
Janelle Monae was signed to Purple Ribbon, and I actually signed her.
Oh, did you?
Yes, her and another gentleman by the name of Scar.
Nice. So I know I just talked to someone who discovered Janelle Monae and brought...
Is it Antonio?
Maybe not. Maybe I lied.
Maybe not. Maybe you can tell me off right.
Yeah, I'll talk to you after. But yeah, so like what was the process, or like how... I mean, she was just such a different artist.
She was.
She is such a different artist.
You know how we talk about that it factor? She definitely had it, and still has it. Yeah. She when we signed Scar first, and we were working on Scar's project, and Janelle would come to the studio because she was a part of Wonderland, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, who is she? You know what I'm saying? And she would do some backgrounds, and I'm like, she's really dope. And so we're getting the Scar project together. She's doing some backgrounds on his project. And then we just kind of start, I'm like, working on Scar. Let's see if we can get Janelle too. And so Antonio Reed actually brought Scar, and he was working with the Wonderland.
Gotcha.
He was managing, but, he knew them in the Wonderland. And so that's how we got
Slowly
Scar in.
Got her on
And
over.
Janelle.
Nice. I didn't know that. So how would you say you stay motivated throughout like the business? Because I'm sure that, or maybe not. Maybe you've had like a lot of ups. But I'm wondering,
It's an up and down thing. Spiritual. Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
I think because I really, like my foundation, I'm a Christian. And so I rely a lot on my spirit, And I honestly don't even see how people make it in this industry because it can be really cutthroat without a balance of spiritual, whether you're Christian, Muslim, whatever you believe in. Like there has to be some foundation where you can go back to and come out of the matrix, which is what I call the music industry.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Pretty toxic sometimes. I mean, like even kind of just recalling some of those moments of like the lows, like had you ever faced some sort of like, I don't know what I'm going to do next? Like did you have any of those moments in between, or were you just blessed or fortunate to have like kind of one thing led to another?
I definitely am blessed and have been very fortunate in that my career has been consistent and there hasn't been lulls in between.
That's what's up.
So
that's what's up. So let me ask you if you have any advice for new artists. Like, I mean, or if you could speak to the advantages that new artists have, especially coming out of a city like Atlanta now, after you all fought for like in the Outkast and the Dungeon Family era of like pioneering Atlanta and Southern rap music. Mm-hmm. Now there's this like, it's something coming out of the city all the time.
All the time.
Do you have any advice for new artists, being that they do have some of these advantages? Like, what should they take advantage of, especially if they're in a place like Atlanta or anywhere really with the internet, right?
I'm going to say be true to you. Mm-hmm. Don't allow someone else to define who you are as an artist. And I encourage artists to perform. Like, do shows, putting out records. It's a great thing. But your money is really going to come from your performances once you build it up. Like, record sales are cool, but I'm going to say perform. So when it's time for you to hit the stage, it's second nature to you.
Absolutely. Did you have any experiences going out on tour? We talked tour briefly.
You know what? I never went out on tour. I went out with KP, but I never went out with Outkast.
Nice.
So KP is a different beast, so it was cool.
What you mean a different beast? What that mean?
Meaning the KP's, he's calm, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that they're not. I'm just saying that, KP is KP. You got to know it to understand what I'm saying.
Is that something that you would have wanted to do, tour with them?
Actually not. No, thank you. I'm grateful that my children were small at that age. I'm sure they had an amazing time, but just wasn't for me.
Are your kids interested in the music business?
Well, my children are actually adults now. Oh. And they had a phase when they wanted to be in music. And I remember when my son came to me, he's like, man, I want to rap. And I was like, oh, Lord, no, Jesus, why are you doing this? But, he played around with it for a while. And he kind of dabbles a little now, but Nah.
Cool. I mean, I want to kind of get some of your fonder memories in the studio, like or even your relationship to this studio. Like you've seen it from the inception.
Yeah, because Curtis and KP started working together. Well, KP started working at Patchwork, Curtis' studio, very, very early on, and he did a lot of records here. They did a lot of the Outkast projects here. I think from ATL and on, Curtis?
The second album,
Yep, from ATL. And like, they were in here consistently. They were in here basically until they got their own studio. They spent a lot of time here.
Yeah.
So it was just amazing. I came here sometime, but my kids were small at that time, so I didn't get out and go to studios a lot. But when they got Stankonia, I went to more sessions because I was there already working.
Right.
And I remember, there are two moments I remember. I remember when I came into work one morning and Killer Mike, he wasn't signed to us at the time, but he had just laid his verse on Snapping and Trapping, and I walked in the studio, and I was like, yo, who is that? And I'm like, we're signing him, right? And people was like, yeah. And I was just so amazed. I think Killer Mike does not get the credit he deserves as an MC. Like, I think he was before his time, but now, he's getting it.
Yeah.
So it was good to see. So that was one moment. And then I remember when they were recording Miss Jackson. And I walked in, and all I could was, I can't, Zeus, the reversal. That's all you could hear, Zeus. I'm like, yo. And then he hit that button, and the music came in. I'm like, this song is
a hit. You knew it was a hit.
Yeah. It evoked the emotion and the feeling. I'm like, yo, this song is dope. And then I watch him put the musicians on it and the instrumentation.
That's one thing that I think I always speak, like, whenever we have somebody on the podcast from Dungeon Family or from that world, it's like the musicians, we don't really have that. You don't see a whole lot of it anymore.
And I miss that because I think that's what puts the feeling in the music. You know what I'm saying? When you can hear drums from a machine, but when you hear live drums, it's a whole different sound and feeling. I think we need to bring live instrumentation back in music.
I agree. I mean, I
know it's a little more expensive, but, there are more avenues now, so I think we need to get it done.
Yeah, there are a few artists that, still utilize live instrumentation, but like you said, it's just so many technology, there's so many other easier ways, and so people are trying to find an easier and cheaper
Everything
way.
is easy in America. That's our problem.
Right?
I'm like, man, they deliver the food, they do your groceries, and next thing you know, they're going to be coming to your house and feed you.
Like, thank you very much. Please wipe this little crumbs off my mouth. Like, it's crazy. I want to ask you, like, what is next for Regina? Like, what after, seeing, what you've been able to do over the years and how you've been consistent and just, like, remain loyal to your clients. Like, I mean, you've been working with KP since pretty much the beginning, full circle to working with the David Banners and still having the relationships with everybody that you've mentioned over the course of this conversation. I'm curious to know, like, what do you foresee for your future? Like, are you looking to empower someone and elevate yourself to a different space in the music business? You going back to fashion?
I am.
Swear.
Well, yes, I've
psychic.
always wanted to transition to film and television. So I'm working on that, and I'm taking on a fashion venture that I'm just starting. So it's early on. There's an accessory that I want to develop that you put on your head.
Nice. No.
So I'm working on those, and those are the two things that I'm doing for me. Because usually I put myself on the back burner, but this year, it's going to be the year of the queen.
I'm happy to hear that, because I was going to say, I feel like a lot of the work that you do, not to say that it's not valued, because I'm sure you have great clients.
Yes.
So they do. I've seen KP in your relationship, so I know that he values you, but I'm saying that the line of work that you do is oftentimes a little undervalued. Like, you're always extending your hand, but who extends their hand for Regina?
Absolutely, my client. But you have to be comfortable and be okay with you and okay with other people not understanding what you do. I've learned to just be me. Understand that people are people. When they show you who they are, believe them. Don't try to make them out to be something else. And you know what? Just be your best you.
Absolutely. Dope. So, as a woman in the industry, we didn't really touch on being a woman in the industry because I feel like we've surpassed that at this point. We talked about women, but curious because there's like a rise in female rappers that we've seen through the Cardi B's, the Meg Thee Stallions, and so on and so forth. But there's like, it seems as if the female rappers who are most successful kind of over-sexualize or like play into over-sexualizing themselves. I'm not saying, for me personally, I feel like you should be able to embrace that part of you, but it seems like that's what it is, and that's the thing that creates success within that realm for a female rapper. Versus, like, you've been a fan of hip-hop and you've seen like the Queen Latifahs, the MC Lights, so on and so forth early on to like now this transition where like literally every female rapper with success is like she has to have her ass out. She has to be overly exposed. And I'm not even going to say it has to be, but it just seems as though that's what is selling. For someone who may have a young daughter or a daughter or a niece or whoever who's inspired and wants to pursue music, how can we even like, how do we negate that it has to be a certain way in order to get into the industry when it's proven that this is what works or this is what it looks like it sells?
Because it sells, right?
Right.
It sells because it's people buying it, and because they're buying it, we buy into that. That's what they want. But I think there should be something within you that, let's see, how can I say this? Okay, we mentioned the Latifahs and the Lights, and you know how when you introduced me, I said I'm a queen. I'm not going to say that they don't think they're queens, but I'm saying as a woman, you should carry yourself a certain way. And I might catch flack for this, but you should carry yourself a certain way. And if you're sexy and you feel that way, you know, I think to me, sex appeal is natural. You don't have to have your bra here with the nipple halfway up or halfway down. Like, just be you. And there are women out there that are doing it that aren't over-sexualized, like Rhapsody. Like she is doing the doggone thing. So it's an individual thing, you know what I'm saying? And we don't have to do it. It's a choice, you know? But we are all queens, and we should carry ourselves in that way because there are young girls looking for role models and wanting to rap, and these are the images that they see. But it's just like in hip hop, you know, we may only hear on the radio songs about sex, drugs, you know, getting high, but there are tons of other rappers out there that you know they're in the underground that we don't hear. So it's up to us to bring those images and those people to the forefront.
And just make better choices about what it is that we listen to and what we expose our kids to.
Absolutely. Because if you expose them to it, they're going to do it.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying you should hide it from them either, but if you're going to let them listen, there should be some explanations.
I agree. So you have those conversations.
Oh, with my grandkids.
You have to.
My niece, you have to.
I'm speaking, my niece makes music and she, you know, is singing about, you know, being herself and being truly her and like inspiring other young girls. So it's definitely music out there, and she has seen, you know, what, like we don't hide anything from her, but it's her choice too that say like, you know, well, I want to make music about this and that.
Absolutely, because music is programming. It's mental programming. So it all depends on what program you want.
Yeah. Well, I just had to ask you that question because I'm like, you know, as a woman, as someone who carries herself well, I know you have some sort of insight on that topic, and we could go on and on for days about it, but I'll leave it there.
Non-disclosure agreement, Sammy.
Thank you, Regina. I feel like you probably have a lot more stories that you haven't shared, but we can talk about it later. Because, you know, people be real quiet on here. I'm like, I need to get the stories out. But no, I'm excited for your ventures, especially getting back to something you're passionate about, which is fashion.
Yes.
So good luck with all of that. Please let them know where they can find you on social media if you like to be found.
You can find me, I don't know if you go, Regina.Davenport on Instagram. That's the only platform. No, Facebook, Regina.Davenport. Also want to tell you guys, listen to the David Banner podcast. Give it 5 stars and a comment. Go to davidbanner.com, shop for merchandise. KP the Great is out there DJing. He's going to have merch soon. So, look out and support your people.
Absolutely.
Can we support each other?
We should. We should. And I hope that we continue to do so. Thank you, Regina. And
You are welcome.
As always, you guys can find this podcast at IDM Podcast on social media, as well as myself at Sammy Approved on all social media platforms. Thank you.
Thank you. Ewing Athletics for the shoe.